Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. Well, here we have it, another short report, this time focusing on Iren. We're going to be dissecting that in today's presentation, really calling into question the company's valuation, prompting a further discussion between Anthony and I in terms of miner valuation metrics. Now, in addition to that, you guys, we got news out from Soluna, Bitfarms, and Core Scientific, so a number of housekeeping items to go through in today's video. Before we do though, please take a second, smash the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. Anthony loves it. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. We're trying to hit 45,000 subscribers before we head down to Bitcoin Nashville. We're well on our way, and we'd really appreciate you as part of the community. And with that being said, you guys, leave a comment in the section below. Let us know what you thought on this short report, and if you're currently holding shares of Iren, your outlook for the sector in the back half of the year, and your price target on Bitcoin as we're starting to see some price action and upward bullish momentum. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay, guys, so that's right. Another day, another series of news releases and press releases in the Bitcoin mining sector. First and foremost, Anthony, we've got another short report out, this time focusing their target or sights on Iren and really calling into question the valuation of this company, the HPC moves that they're making, and overall viability of the business. So we're going to get into that in a second here, Anthony. We've also got news out from Soluna, Bitfarms, and Core Scientific. So a lot to go through in today's presentation. How are you feeling this morning?
Feeling good today.
Green across the board. I'll bring up a quick mid-morning market update, you guys, including Iren. Every single miner we cover other than SATO Technologies at this point in the morning, about 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time, having a very green start to the day. Bitcoin price is showing some strength here, Anthony. Nice to see the miners recovering in such great fashion, especially after this short report coming out yesterday, hey?
Absolutely. And like you say, Iron's recovering today. It was down 13% yesterday, but it's already up nearly 7.5% today. So it's leading the charge from the miners, closely followed by the likes of Marathon and CleanSpark.
Yeah, really nice.
And Soluna as well. Sorry, Soluna as well jumping in there at 6% up today.
Nice to see some strength. It's been all over the place in terms of volatility this week, but always nice to end the week on a green note. Now, Anthony, let's talk about this short report. So we've seen a number of these in the industry. Riot, Hut 8 come to mind, a number of different companies involved in these short reports. This one's from Corp Research, targeting Iren. We'll bring it up on the screen here. This was an 18-page short report, Anthony, so definitely a lot of points to go through here. But the main focal point, you guys, really talking about their HPC expansion and the valuation and costs associated with this endeavor. So, Anthony, I know you've put together a great table. Before we get into that, I wanted to do a quick track record look at Corp Research. Now, interestingly enough, there's a number of tweets coming out, obviously a flurry of information as people investigate this company. Interestingly enough, one of their 23 followed accounts is Carysdale Capital. So that was another short position or short report that was opened in the industry or Bitcoin mining sector. And interestingly enough, Anthony, if you go back and look at a lot of the companies that Corp has actually shorted, many of them have had very strong upward bullish moves in terms of share price. So after doing a little bit more research, it sounds or appears like somebody, potentially Corp, purchased a lot of short-dated put options on Iren. Many of those have now been closed out, so it may have been a targeted short-term attack, but nonetheless, really stirs up a great conversation about HPC and about Bitcoin mining valuations that I want to get into next here.
Yeah, I mean, looking at those tweets on social media that came out this last day or so, it's interesting that the short reports affected the stock price for a very short period of time, and then they sort of recovered. So whether they're just sort of like highlighting, trying to show 2 or 3 facts and ambush it with 98% of rubbish. So it's I read through some of the report and I got to so many pages before I gave up because even in the first paragraph, it was saying, Iron's share price over the last 4 years. Well, that's a lie. From in the first paragraph, Iron had already been a public company since the end of 2021. So we're in 2024 now. So that's not even 3 years. So that's 2 years and change. So if you're going to get the facts, need to go through everything and just have it fact checked before you put it out there. And it will send sort of like a message. These reports come out, and you normally see one came out about Riot, one's come out about Hut before, and most miners at some point in time have probably had one. I think Marathon's had short attacks on their stock price, and it's for a very short period of time, and then you can look through the numbers, and the reason we're sort of like doing today is sort of like for our own benefits, have a look at the numbers and see if they actually stack up with what the report says, and we'll find out in a second.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, Anthony. It's always important to look at other sides of the coin or other perspective, right? And you got to remember, in any market, for every buyer, there's got to be a seller. So obviously, our community is very bullish on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin mining sector, but there's a lot of people that aren't. And these short reports, in my personal opinion, are a great opportunity. I was actually adding to my Iren position yesterday, Anthony. Great opportunity to pick up some shares in companies that you have strong conviction in over the long term, because you're exactly right, Anthony. This is just short-term noise and pressure on share price. Looks like that's been shut off in under 24 hours. So let's pivot now to the more important question here about miner valuations. I know you've put together a fairly robust table for us, a number of metrics here, Anthony. Why don't you walk us through what we're looking at on the screen?
Yeah, so I've put together effectively like an extract from the balance sheet, highlighting things like the market capitalization, the amount of debt these companies have got, the amount of cash these companies have got, and then looking at sort of the Bitcoin HODL that they've got as of June, and then calculating the enterprise value. I like to use the enterprise value as in preference to the market capitalization, because it does take account of things like debt and cash and Bitcoin. So it puts miners on a more level playing field when you're dealing with that. And so then started to look at some of these numbers that the Culper report started quoting, and the first one obviously they quoted was the fact how much value or cost or Iron spending per megawatt, and I think they came up with, I think it was something like 7.5 million per megawatt was in the report. And actually, that figure isn't far away from what I've come up with there. I've got in terms of enterprise value divided by the megawatts at the moment. So they've got an enterprise value of 1.8 billion, and they have 260 megawatts in operation at the moment. Yes, they've got a lot more than that at the sites, but they're only operating with 260. So I've used the operational power for each of these companies at the moment. And bear in mind, I've took into the total operational power. So some of these companies have hosting contracts, some of them have managed service contracts. But again, effectively, it's looking at the power that they manage. So it's a relevant metric. And so if you look at from an Iron perspective there, I'm getting 7 million per megawatt, which is not far away from what the report says. So, and then if you start looking across other miners at that particular metric, there's only a couple of miners that actually are that high. One of them is TeraWulf at 8.1 million, and the other one is CleanSpark at 6.5 million. Now that tells you what the position is today, but bear in mind, some of these companies are going to grow significant hash rate and grow power by the end of the year. And I also sort of thought, well, actually, if you're going to do buy power, let's look at some of the other metrics as well. So I also went through and looked at the enterprise value, looking at the current hash rate and looking at the future hash rate, and that gives you an indication then of in terms of, and this really it's okay for pure miners, but where you've got some of these miners who've got other businesses, it doesn't really include any of the benefit that those businesses bring to the organization. So if you look at the likes of, say, Bitdigital there, if you go and look at there, so their current hash rate divided into their enterprise value gives you $111 million per per exahash. Now, that doesn't take account of the 50 million a year they're receiving currently for their their HPC contract with their client in Iceland. Nor does it take account of any of their Ethereum staking. So they have other revenue streams that won't be included to get to that figure. So, what might appear to be quite a high figure, actually, you could turn around and start actually separating these businesses out and using the percentage of enterprise value for each of the businesses. So it would be significantly lower. But if you move across to Iren, so Iren at the moment, if you look at their enterprise value divided by their current hash rate, you get 180 million per exahash. And actually, again, that's another metric that looks quite high compared to peer miners. Only TeraWulf at 192. Now, Iren and TeraWulf are probably two of the shares in the last sort of month or so that have really done really well in terms of price action. I mean, both of them reached year highs in the last month or so. You had Iren reaching $15.05, and I think TeraWulf reached $6.05. And bear in mind, these shares, last year you could have picked up Iren just over $1, and you could have picked up TeraWulf at 50 cents or just slightly less than 50 cents. So they've had a remarkable rise. And yes, the valuation looked quite high at the current installed hash rate, but bear in mind, again, all these companies are looking to grow, or most of these are looking to grow significant hash rate this year. So if you then start looking at the enterprise value divided by the future hash rate, because actually, if a company says, well, we've got sort of 9 or 10 exahash, and we're going to grow to 30 exahash by the end of the year, then how much of the stock price has got that position built into to that value? So, it's always interesting to look at the future hash rate. And if you look at the future hash rate, then it gives Iren, a valuation of 60 million per exahash. And that puts it then down as one of the more reasonable cost per exahash. Yes, some of the smaller miners like Soluna, like SATO, like DMG, really small. But if you look at the sort of like the mid top tier miners, you've got Hive Digital at 34 million per exahash. You've got Bit Digital at 52. You've got Bitfarms at 42. But then look at the top, the sort of those that are hoping to get into the top tier. You've got Cypher at 87. You've got CleanSpark at 90. You've got Core Scientific at 111. And Core Scientific, bear in mind, that doesn't include any of the HPC business, and that's nearly a 400 million a year revenue business. That's bigger business than the Bitcoin mining business, and it's so again, if you'd have took that business out and took it away from enterprise value, that number would be literally half or even less than half that figure. But again, you've got HUT 144, and so with HUT. With hash rate, that's just looking at their self-mining hash rate. Self-mining hash rate is 5.5. But if you look at what they've got in terms of managed hash rate, because they host and they manage service on behalf of others, then it's well over 20 exahash. So again, it doesn't give you the full tail on those. Marathon is a pure play miner. That's at 90 million. Riot at 50 million. So Riot, in terms of a top tier miner, from a valuation perspective, bear in mind if they're going to achieve their 31.5 and they've got to 22 at the moment, so the likelihood is they will get there. That seems to be a good valuation for a top tier miner. So Iren at 60 isn't that it's in that sort of like that mid area. It's not too expensive, and again with Iren, it doesn't take account of the HPC. And so, you can talk a little bit more about HPC services if you want at the moment, Bryce.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, Anthony, because going through that short report really focused a lot on HPC, costs of build out, the liquid cooling, the site, the redundancy of the power. But they're forgetting, you guys, the whole Bitcoin mining story and side of the business here. And as you mentioned, Anthony, the market is forward looking. So any of this press releases or information that's in the public domain, you've got to assume some of that 30 exahash growth is priced into these stocks. So as I say before, there's always got to be a buyer and a seller, and depending which one of these metrics or lines of this table you look at, Anthony, you could paint a case for or against any one of these companies, looking at a single component of their business. But that's why it's so important to have the holistic view. And in terms of valuation, this is an area we've been struggling with for as long as we've covered this sector, Anthony. These companies are getting more and more complicated, complex. These are frontline or cutting edge industries that the market really hasn't figured out yet or found a proper way to value. And that's why you see the volatility and these huge share price returns as people are starting to wake up to these stories. So yes, I can see where Culper is coming from on some of their points, but I think they're missing the forest for the trees here, Anthony, and there's a lot more to this story.
Just want to mention one more metric that I thought would put a little bit more clearer is actually taking the Q1 results for all these miners and looking at the free cash flow that they achieved. So this is like take all the revenues that they received in, take all the costs in cash against those revenues. That gives you a free cash flow position for each of the miners for Q1. And then look at the megawatts that they've got that they're operating with. So again, this is looking at from a megawatt perspective. So how much sort of like free cash flow or effectively profit is each of those megawatts delivering? And this then gives you sort of like a more interesting view on it. Again, it's another metric, but if you look at all these metrics in totality, you start getting a picture. So, if you want to see that, the miners who are driving the most revenue from each of their megawatts, then you'd have to look at sort of the likes of, SATO technology, $223,000 per megawatt. You've got TeraWulf at 152,000. You've got Core Scientific at 104,000. CleanSpark 143,000. Bit Digital 179,000. And you've got Iren at 88,000. And then if you look at some of the ones that are, at the lower end of the scale, you've got HUT at 8,000 per megawatt. Now, in fairness to HUT, they've got most of theirs is managed services, so the margins are a lot less with a managed service than they are if you own the facility, and you're not paying all those. You're only getting, you're getting just a margin with managed services. So, I'd expect that number to improve there. But you've got Bitfarms at 58. You've got Hive at 87. You've got Riot at 24. So Riot, in terms of the megawatts they've got available, they just weren't achieving the types of revenues that you'd expect with that amount of megawatts available. So Iren again, it's by no means overvalued. It looks like it's delivering a certain amount, and actually and with that hash rate going up significantly and more efficient miners, then you'd expect that metric to improve for them as well. So it's just, those are 3 or 4 different metrics that people can look at. You can pause the video, have a look at the table, but it's just an interesting view from a different angle. So yes, some of the facts in that report, that's that. I remember that, but actually, when you put 2 or 3 facts in there, and then you highlight 97, loads of rubbish, and that's they're trying to drive a report based on the three truths they've actually wrote down. So, as I say, I think you've highlighted the fact that these type of reports are very short-termistic. Share price went down yesterday. They benefit from a short-term trade, and now the share price is recovering today. So they'll be looking for the next company to have a go at now. And this will be this was newspaper yesterday, and we're wrapping our fish and chips up tomorrow with the same newspaper. So that's the way we look at it in the UK. It's old news now, moving forward. But there was a couple of elements that I sort of align with it, but the majority of that 17-page report was dire.
Well, and no company is perfect, Anthony. Any one of the companies we cover, there's been flaws and learnings, right? But we'll move on from this one, guys. We don't need to beat a dead horse here. The number I keep thinking, Anthony, we've talked so much about the $100 million per exahash floor being set in that Bitfarms Riot M&A discussion. So at a high level, you guys, 30 exahash by year end. If Iren hits that, that's a $3 billion market cap just based on Bitcoin mining exahash floor that we've seen in the market. And even today, Anthony, they're back up almost 10% now. Their market cap is still only in the 2.3, $2.4 billion range. So even
And
from
how much of that 30 exahash is built into that price? That's the question.
that's
You
the
know,
question.
that their share price took off when they announced they were going to get to 30. I mean, I was having trouble I actually had Iren in the column saying, are they going to get to 20 by the end of the year? Because at that point in time, I think they were about 8. And so it's like, you've got to 8 over the last 2.5 years. And now you're going to get another 12 in the next sort of 7 or 8 months. It's like, how are you going to do it? It took you so long to build those first 5 buildings at Childress. How are you going to build another 12 buildings in sort of like literally half the time? And so, but they can, and the market saw that news update really sort of like changed. I don't think it was a HPC fire. I think it was that news update to go to 30, and they should have emphasized that in the Corp report. That's what they're aiming for: 30 exahash, top tier miner. That's what they should have started the report with, and see if they had any flaws in achieving the 30 exahash, because I think those in Riot will get theirs, and then we'll see who out the other 3 who can do it with a multitude of sites they've got to increase on. So, but yeah, let's end it there.
They were too busy using AI to put that Prius at the Grand Prix, Anthony. They couldn't focus on the Bitcoin mining. They were working on the AI side there. Nothing to be worried about, you guys. As mentioned, I was buying more shares of Iren yesterday, and I'm feeling very good about it today. Now, moving along, Anthony, we've got news out from 3 more miners today. Speaking of AI, Saluna's up first. They're talking about their enterprise customers. The generative AI labs are now open. They have access to the first batch of these NVIDIA GPUs. So this is a big step in the right direction for Soluna, really making this AI HPC vision come to fruition. Hey,
yeah, this is great, and they've been talking about this moving to HPC for quite a while now. This is not something that's just recently occurred. It was on their radar. I mean, John's been the CEO for the last just over 12 months of that company, and you can sort of see the changes that have been implemented in his tenure. So this move into Soluna Cloud, this contract over the next 3 years, with their H100 GPUs, they're looking to get somewhere between 38 and 80 million in revenue. Which for this, again, we look at the size of the company. The market capitalization today is probably under, let's check, it's under 30 million, is it? 29.2 million, the market capitalization today. So, and this is just one of the revenue streams. This isn't even in the presentation as a revenue stream. So this needs to be added on to what they're doing with their 3 or 4 projects at the moment. So I think in their presentation, I think they were planning on 38 million this year in terms of revenue from the business using the low hash rate. And so therefore you've got, more revenues coming in from this project. You're going to have Project Catty when that gets announced, and that'll be driving revenues next year. So, I like what I see with Soluna. It's they're doing things in a small way, but they're certainly punching above their weight. And if the margins from this come through, the margins to this can support some of their other businesses and get them off the ground quicker. Because at the moment, with capital being as it is, they're relying on partnering a lot of these projects to get them off the ground, so the capital can be invested, and then they'll have some sort of like a revenue share post when the project goes live and it's driving revenues. But yeah, I think we've had sort of half a dozen good updates from Soluna in the last sort of couple of months. So this is just another good update today, and it's worth a mention out there.
Yeah, add it to the pile of good news. John was talking about getting us out there for a groundbreaking ceremony of one of these new facilities. So that would also be a nice little trip for us, Anthony.
So now, bring a shovel or something, didn't he?
There you go, golden shovel. Yeah, I've never been a part of a groundbreaking. Now, moving along here, Bitfarms Riot saga continuing. Bitfarms has now set an official date for a special meeting of shareholders to really address this issue and hear from shareholders in terms of their opinion. Anthony, not a huge press release here, but good to see things are moving in the right direction, eh?
Riot Platforms have requested it, to try and reach out to the shareholders. And so Bitfarms today, they've announced a special shareholders meeting, which will take place on the 29th of October, and effectively, they'll provide information to shareholders ahead of the meeting, and then all those shareholders who have shares in the company as at the 26th of September are eligible to vote on any of the motions put forward. And so what Bitfarms has said, just to wrap it up really, is that while they're going through this process now, they've announced the date. They just want to have a constructive engagement with Riot and its own shareholders as they go through this process, because what they don't want to start doing is spending out, money on legal requirements going forward, backwards and forwards between the two companies. At the end of the day, I said before, this is going to be down to the shareholders who decide this. We spoke the other day about Riot, addressing some of their concerns via a website, where shareholders can go on the website and have a look at the information on there to see, see if that view from Riot's perspective. We had Ben Gagnon, the new CEO, on the podcast, the day he was announced, and I think it's fair to say that there was a significant amount of support for that appointment. People were suggesting Ben, weeks before he was appointed, to say he'd be a good fit, and so he's got some time now to get things going. They've had quite a few updates since the initial request from Riot. So they've leased the site in Pennsylvania, the 120 megawatt site, which has got 12 megawatts ready to go now, and the rest of it will be, the rest of the 120 megawatts will be, put in place to start delivering in terms of Bitcoin mining and potentially HPC revenues from that site. So, yeah, they're not just stopping at the 15 sites they've got at the moment. They're still going out looking for sites. So they've ticked a few boxes since this bit of a M&A activity with Riot. They've appointed the CEO. They've appointed another director. So we talked about Fanny Phillip joining the board. She was previously the chief operating officer for SATO Technology. And now Bitfarms are going out there just doing their business. So, we expect that to continue. And people out there saying, it's why are Riot doing this? Well, from Riot's perspective, they believe in Bitfarms. They believe in the company. They believe it's got potential. So, it should be seen as a positive thing that another company likes it. It's not, end of the day, it's down to the shareholders if they vote it through. But it should be looked at the fact that they've looked at Bitfarms as opposed to other mining companies and said that's a great company that's well run by the operational team there. Their concern is about directors, about the management there, and they've articulated what their views on that. And Bitfarms have responded now by having this shareholders meeting to take it further in October. So there's a few months to go from there. I'm sure we'll see some updates from both companies as we get closer to that date with more information for shareholders.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up. You hear a lot of people, the Bitfarms shareholders, saying, hey, leave us alone. Shareholders aren't interested. We want to run as a separate company. But it's ironic, Anthony, because Riot is the biggest shareholder. So they obviously have the most skin in the game. They're most bullish on Bitfarms compared to any other shareholder because they hold more value or more position in this company. So definitely one to watch. It is an astute point, though, you brought up. Ben is new at the helm. They've got a lot going on internally in terms of operations, really trying to minimize as much distraction or effort, money, manpower, time that they have to invest in this M&A pursuit to really focus on those other growth areas for the business. So we'll continue to watch that one as it plays out. The other one playing out here in real time is the Core Scientific warrants are starting to peel off. So we've got the Tranche 2 warrants, which are the Z warrants, now up for triggering, Anthony. So how are you feeling? I know you personally hold these warrants about the Core Scientific progression here.
Yeah, so yesterday the share price reached or it exceeded the $8.72, which was required to be held for 20 working days above that number. And so from today onwards, you can activate or exercise your Core Z warrant. Now, unfortunately, my my broker today says they can't action it. So they said the only way I've got to do it is to sell the warrant, which then means I've got a tax liability on the gain I've received. So that's going to be a challenge, and I'm disappointed with that because I wanted to convert my warrants into shares. I mean, effectively, I can sell the shares, get the price of the today's price, which is just hovering around the $10 mark, and then go and buy shares at the same price. But that means because I've sold warrants, I'm activating some sort of taxable liability. So, I would rather just transfer the shares over, and then when I decide to sell the shares in the future, that creates the liability then. So I've wrote to the investor relations at Core Scientific to find out if there's anything they can do for overseas shareholders who were with brokers that probably don't know how to do this, and if there's a way that we can access it, because I would prefer to do that. So that's an interesting point of view from the UK. But for shareholders themselves, those warrants now can be activated, and it's just it was literally 1 cent is the requirement to activate each warrant. So those were effectively free shares given to every shareholder that held shares before the announcement. So it's great for the shareholders, and actually the Core W warrant can also be activated now as well. So but that requires shareholders to exercise the price, and so that needs to be done there. So that still has probably nearly 2.5 years to run. But from Core Scientific's perspective, they prefer to get those warrants activated quickly, so that once that money comes into the company, they can clear the debt, give themselves a cash runway, have no caveats going forward on any of their requirements, so they can start using all the different strategies available to them, and be able to raise funds without any issue whatsoever. So, it does release a lot of caveats against the company. So the company, bear in mind, 6 months ago, even less than 6 months ago today, they were still in Chapter 11. So it's a really good first 6 months for the company. We've had numerous updates coming out. I mean, we still say the biggest news story in Bitcoin mining this year was the announcement of the CoreWeave contract back, a few months ago, and no other news items come anywhere close to dealing with that. That actually really shook up and changed the discussion within the Bitcoin mining sector, how things are going forward. What's the discussion at the moment as opposed to what the discussion might be in 2 or 3 years' time?
Yeah, it certainly did. And Anthony, it's been so interesting to watch this play out. I've seen a number of tweets now talking about this as the emergence from Chapter 11, at least of the year, but potentially ever. This is quite a comeback story, going from trading in the 4 cent range, going into bankruptcy, now to being one of the top contenders in this leading edge HPC AI Bitcoin mining space. Truly phenomenal transition and work there from the team at Core Scientific. So that's another one we'll keep you guys apprised of. Like I say, no shortage of news today. Anthony, I'm looking at the portfolio now, very green across the board. All of the miners really having a strong end to the week here, again, on that price action we're seeing in Bitcoin. So hopefully this can hold up for another 4 hours. We'll head into the weekend green. I'll flip it back to you for any closing thoughts, but we appreciate the time today, Anthony.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. We've seen quite a bit of volatility with the price action in mining stocks throughout the week. Not just Iren yesterday, but the markets. Some of the days they've been trading, really green, and it's come off literally, within an hour of markets opening. But it's good if the Bitcoin price can keep this smaller momentum going in the right direction, because as we said in previous podcasts, we're getting to the point now where we're sort of into that sort of 70-90 days post the previous halving, and this is the sort of time where the Bitcoin price in previous cycles, in the 3 previous cycles, has started to sort of take off a little bit. So we wait with bated breath for that to occur. But yeah, it's hopefully it should be a good weekend. Wimbledon final tomorrow. England playing on Sunday in the final of the Euros, so busy sports weekend for everyone. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, we'll be watching the football alongside you, Anthony. Anthony and I have an ongoing bet with the Euro Cup right now. So we'll be watching that. You guys, if you're still watching the video today, you're making some money, smash the like button. We'd really appreciate it. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. We're almost at our 45,000 subscriber goal. And with that being said, feel free to leave any comments in the section below. Let us know what you thought about the Iren short report, the other news that we covered today, and your price target on Bitcoin for the back half of the year here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys tomorrow.